cold wind from the North Sea pierced even the thickest woolen cloaks, carrying with it the smell of salt and impending death. In a world where the sun disappeared for months on end, the ability to preserve food was not a matter of comfort, but the only boundary between life and death for an entire settlement. When the grass disappeared under the snow and the cattle stopped producing milk, the Vikings opened their secret storerooms, created with engineering precision and a deep understanding of nature. This was not just cooking, but a fierce battle against entropy, in which the tools were not swords and axes, but bacteria, salt, and cold earth. Watch the video to the end to find out how the ancient Scandinavians turned perishable milk into white gold that could be stored for years without a single refrigerator.
A fine harvest. Eat heartily.
We are grateful, husband. It looks magnificent.
What if I told you that everything you believed about the fierce barbarians was untrue, and that their main strength lay not in raiding, but in their ability to manage milk? Many people imagine Vikings exclusively as ferocious sea robbers, but this is only a small part of their culture. In fact, life in the north required far more wisdom than blood, and it was milk that became the fortress they built every day. The Northerners understood that their future depended not only on the sword, but also on the cow, which provided a vital resource. This connection between humans and animals was so close that dairy products became the basis of existence even before the onset of winter storms. For the inhabitants of Scandinavia, the cow was not just livestock, but a living engine that ensured the survival of the entire clan during the darkest times of the year. It provided energy that could be stored, processed, and used when the whole world was plunged into frost and silence. The Vikings treated their cows with respect, understanding that they were the ones saving people from starvation. In a harsh climate where harvests were unpredictable, it was milk and dairy products that sustained the community's rhythm of life. In winter, the clan depended on summer milkings as much as on their own bravery in battle. Where the land was rocky and harvests were meager, livestock became the heart of the economy. The fields could not feed everyone, but the pastures covering the hills provided a chance to create a stable source of food. Therefore, almost every family kept several cows, considering them their most valuable asset. These animals were like precious capital that brought in a profit every day. Thanks to this, the Vikings were able to survive not only the usual frosts, but also particularly difficult years when food became critically scarce. Their survival depended directly on how well they mastered the craft of dairy farming. In the summer, when the pastures were green and lush, there was an abundance of milk, so much that it was physically impossible to drink fresh milk every day. It was a time of hard work, when women labored from morning to night, turning a perishable product into long-lasting supplies. They understood that the summer surplus was not a joy, but a challenge that required skill and quick decisions. The Vikings had long learned that milk could not be left unattended for a minute. It had to pass through the hands of the hostess as quickly as possible. But this resource was treacherous and tended to spoil in a matter of hours, especially in warm weather. Therefore, experienced women could determine how much time they had left by smell alone. They worked quickly and confidently, not allowing accidents to destroy future supplies. Every housewife knew that a mistake in such work could cost the family their survival in winter. This constant struggle with nature turned into a kind of ritual that was repeated every day. Ancient masters understood that fresh milk was only a raw material that required immediate and complex processing for long-term storage. They perceived it as a living substance that changed its structure every hour. Women knew exactly what to do to prevent this product from losing its value. Their knowledge was the result of centuries of observation and experimentation. Thanks to these practices, even the hottest day did not pose a threat to the future winter diet. They perceived this product as liquid energy that had to be preserved at all costs in order to release it in winter, when the world around them turned into an icy desert. This energy became a source of support for the elderly, children, and warriors. It sustained the body, warmed it, and allowed it to conserve strength when the sun barely rose above the horizon. Milk, transformed into long-lasting products, became a kind of inner light that accompanied people during the most difficult times. Its value was enormous, as it replaced entire baskets of fresh food. Every liter obtained from a cow was immediately sent to work, where there was no room for delay or error. Housewives clanged their jugs as confidently as warriors clanged their swords. They got to work without hesitation, because every minute was important. At the same time, the women remained calm, understanding that only patience and precision would yield the desired result. Their work was invisible, but everyone knew perfectly well that without it, hunger would become a constant companion of northern families. The women who managed the household possessed knowledge that was passed down from generation to generation and was valued more highly than gold jewelry or weapons. This knowledge was a real treasure that could not be bought or taken away by force. Girls learned the intricacies of dairy work from early childhood, watching their mothers and grandmothers. They absorbed the experience as naturally as breathing. As they grew up, each woman became the keeper of knowledge that determined the fate of the family. They knew how to stop time for this product using the invisible forces of nature that we now call fermentation. They sensed when milk needed more heat or when, on the contrary, the vessel needed to be placed in the shade. They knew how to control this process without thermometers or stopwatches, relying only on their hands and intuition. It was knowledge that could not be described in words, but could be felt. It was this knowledge that transformed a fragile product into a stable food. They understood smells, temperature, and thickness, and could determine what to do next with a single glance. These women possessed a sense that combined experience, observation, and natural intuition. They knew how to predict the outcome even before the process began in earnest. Such skill gave them a special power that was respected by all members of the clan. In their hands, milk became a solid foundation for the entire community. It was the art of turning an unstable liquid into a solid currency that could survive any frost and become the basis of the diet. It was thanks to this art that winter ceased to be a death sentence. People knew that the reserves created by women's hands awaited them, and this gave them confidence. Dairy products became a guarantee that spring would surely be survived. This art was as important as blacksmithing or navigation at sea. Without these skills, winter would have been a death sentence for entire families. And the further north the dwelling was, the more people depended on the dairy craft. Where grains did not grow and harsh winds blew the warmth out of homes, dairy products became the last source of nutrition. Without them, survival was impossible. Therefore, respect for the masters of this craft was absolute. In their hands, milk was separated into fractions, each of which had its own unique purpose in the complex system of the winter diet. This process resembled alchemy, where several types of food appeared from one liquid. Women knew that every part of the milk had to be used to its fullest potential. They separated the product so carefully, as if they were arranging jewels in boxes. As a result, each substance acquired its own role. The fat cream became the basis for butter, which gave warmth to the body and was as valuable as meat. Butter helped people survive cold nights when the fire in the hearth was weak. It was used in cooking, as fuel, and stored as a strategic reserve. Butter was considered a stabilizer of the diet, capable of strengthening the body in the most difficult periods. That is why women paid so much attention to it. The whey was used as a drink to quench thirst and strengthen the immune system, and the skimmed part was turned into cheese, cottage cheese, and thick fermented milk products. These products nourished people when there was no more fresh milk. They provided energy, strengthened health, and sustained the body during the long, cold months. The Vikings used every component as if they were working with precious metal. This system made their diet balanced and well thought out. Not a single drop was spilled on the earthen floor, because such wastefulness could cost someone their life in the spring when supplies were running low. People understood perfectly well that food was life, and they could not afford to be careless. Even small leftovers could become the basis for new products. This approach fostered discipline and respect for work. It was passed on to children from an early age. It was a waste-free technology, perfected in conditions of severe resource scarcity, where every decision could affect the fate of a family. This approach allowed Northerners to survive where other peoples would not have endured even one winter. They knew how to turn difficulties into opportunities. That is why their civilization left such a deep mark on history. Are you ready to learn the truth about a product that is sold in supermarkets today as a trendy superfood, but was a matter of life and death for the Vikings? Skir was the Scandinavians' main response to the challenges of the time, a unique fermented milk product that did not spoil for months. It was neither yogurt nor cottage cheese as we know it, but something in between, with incredible density and nutritional value. The process of making it was like alchemy, where a spoonful of old skyr preserved from the previous year was added to fresh skimmed milk. This starter contained ancient bacterial cultures that were carefully preserved in every family as the greatest treasure. The milk was heated to body temperature, mixed with the starter, and left alone, allowing the magic of fermentation to do its work. The curd became dense, acquiring a sour taste, which was the best natural preservative of that era. This was followed by a long process of filtering through coarse woolen cloth to remove excess moisture. The result was a product so thick that it could be cut with a knife and wrapped in cloth. Skir was stored in huge wooden vats, where it continued to mature slowly, becoming only more beneficial and safer. The acidic environment created by lactic acid killed any pathogenic bacteria that could cause poisoning. The Vikings ate skyr cold, mixed with grain, or diluted with water to make a nutritious drink on their travels. Barrels of skyr stood in storerooms, exuding a characteristic sour aroma that meant satiety and safety for the inhabitants of the north. This product was so important that it is mentioned in ancient sagas as the food of heroes and gods. It gave warriors the strength they needed to row their dracars for days on end without rest. The protein in Skir was easily digestible and provided a long-lasting feeling of satiety, which was critical when meals were infrequent. In winter, when fresh food was unavailable, frozen skyr was chopped with an axe, cutting off pieces for daily meals. It was a strategic reserve that never failed, retaining its properties until spring. The secret was that the Vikings allowed the milk to sour under complete control, preventing it from rotting. But the skyr also produced another byproduct that was valued no less than the thick mass itself. The production process yielded a huge amount of sour whey, which was never poured away. This clear liquid had properties that we today attribute to strong chemical preservatives. In the next chapter, you will learn how the Vikings used this liquid to preserve meat without a single grain of salt. Guess how long it took to create this perfect preservative, which was a byproduct, but was valued at its weight in gold. This discovery was not accidental. It was the result of long observations of how dairy products behave at different times of the year. The Northerners noticed that after separating the skyr, a liquid remained that did not spoil as quickly as regular milk. Gradually, they began to experiment with its properties, testing how it affected various products. Thus, the origin of this preservative became a small revolution in Viking farming. The whey, or maize, left over after making skyr was a real lifesaver for northern farming. It was produced in huge quantities, especially in summer, when cows gave more milk. Throwing it away would have been wasteful, which was unacceptable in the harsh northern conditions. Therefore, housewives carefully studied all the ways it could be used. It turned out that maisa had valuable properties that could be used all year round. The Vikings discovered that this cloudy, sour liquid was capable of stopping the decay process in other products. It slowed down the growth of bacteria and literally froze the natural process of spoilage. This discovery was the key to extending the shelf life of meat and fish. It made it possible to stock up on large quantities without fear of them going bad. This effect seemed almost miraculous to the people of that era. Instead of throwing it away, they poured the whey into huge oak barrels, creating reserves of technical liquid. The tannins in the wood further enhanced the effect of the acid and protected the contents. These barrels were kept in farm buildings and replenished after each skir was prepared. This is how a reserve of liquid was formed, which was used throughout the winter. These reserves were considered as important a resource as grain or meat. Pieces of meat, fish, and even prepared sausages that needed to be preserved for the winter were immersed in these barrels. Housewives carefully layered the products, making sure that the liquid completely covered them. This prevented contact with air and preserved the food longer. The meat and fish absorbed some of the acid, but remained safe to eat. This method became a simple but reliable solution for families of all incomes. The acid in the whey acted as a powerful barrier to bacteria, preventing them from multiplying in the meat fibers. The internal processes in the food slowed down so much that it could be stored for months. Even if the outer layer changed color, the meat remained firm and safe inside. People quickly appreciated the convenience of this method of storage. It gave them a chance to survive the long winter months without going hungry. Foods aged in such a bath acquired a specific taste, but remained edible and safe for many months. This taste was familiar to Northerners, who appreciated the fact that food did not spoil. Warriors took such preparations with them on campaigns, knowing that they could count on a stable supply of calories. Despite its peculiar aroma, this food helped them survive. It gave them strength at a time when any other product would have long since spoiled. It was a cheap and accessible method of preservation that did not require expensive salt, which had to be purchased from merchants. Salt was expensive, and only wealthy families could afford it in large quantities. Whey solved this problem by replacing imported goods with local resources. It made the community more independent from outside supplies. This independence was a crucial factor for survival in the north. The whey was also boiled down for hours over low heat until it turned into a brown, sweetish mass. Only a small portion of the large volume remained, saturated with milk sugar. This required a lot of time and attention, as it was necessary to monitor the fire and regularly stir the boiling liquid. By the end of the boiling process, the mass became thick, almost viscous. It was cooled and formed into dense pieces. This concentrate, known today as brown sugar, was incredibly high in calories and could be stored almost indefinitely. Its taste was unexpected, sweet, rich, and completely unlike the familiar milk product. For Northerners, it became a real delicacy that saved them from hunger. They took it on hikes and ships as long-term food. This product was a source of energy available in any weather. Iron cauldrons boiled for days, evaporating water and leaving only the essence of milk, sugar, and minerals. These processes took place on every farm where cows were kept. People knew that the longer the whey was boiled, the denser the mass would be. Such work required patience, but the result was worth it. The finished product was stored for years and did not lose its value. The resulting brown cheese bars were taken on long sea voyages as an inviolable reserve. They did not take up much space and practically did not spoil. Even a small piece was enough to satisfy hunger during hard work on deck. Sailors considered these bars their insurance in the unpredictable sea. They knew that such provisions would never let them down. In addition, whey was an excellent drink that quenched thirst better than plain water. Thanks to its acidity and minerals, it helped maintain strength during hard physical work. Diluted whey was light and refreshing. It did not spoil quickly, making it ideal for long voyages. This drink became an integral part of maritime life. Want to know a secret that will change your life and your perception of food expiration dates? For the Vikings, butter was not just a spread on bread, but a concentrated source of energy, currency, and a strategic resource. However, it was impossible to keep sweet butter fresh without a refrigerator. It would go rancid in a matter of days. Therefore, the Vikings produced a special, long-lasting butter, the preparation of which resembled a ritual. The cream was whipped for a long time in heavy wooden butter churns to achieve complete separation of the buttermilk and maximum density of the fat lump. The butter was then washed in ice water many times to remove the remains of milk protein, which was the first to spoil. The pure fat was mixed with a huge amount of coarse sea salt, turning the product into a real concentrate. There was so much salt that before consumption, such butter often had to be soaked in water to restore its edible taste. But the most surprising method of storage was the use of natural refrigerators, peat bogs. Barrels of oil were buried deep in cold, moist peat soil where there was no access to oxygen. In such an anaerobic environment, at a constantly low temperature, the oil acquired a waxy structure and could be stored for years. Archaeologists still find such treasures of oil, which, in theory, have retained their chemical properties after centuries. This method was called earth oil, and it gave the product a specific, pungent taste that was highly prized. Such oil did not melt even in summer, remaining solid and convenient for transportation. It could be loaded into the holds of dracars without fear of it turning into rancid sludge. It was the ideal ration for a warrior. A piece of such oil provided energy for a whole day of travel. The oil was tightly packed into wooden barrels and covered with a layer of melted fat or the same sour whey to seal it. The lids were tightly sealed so that not a single molecule of air could touch the precious contents. In this form, the barrels became a kind of hard currency that could be used to pay taxes to the king. The number of barrels of oil in the barn determined the status of the family and its ability to survive the winter. This product was the basis of winter cooking, adding fat and flavor to meager porridges and soups made from dried fish. The Vikings knew that fat was warmth that warmed a person from the inside during the most severe frosts. The loss of oil reserves was equivalent to the loss of heating in the house, condemning the family to a cold death. In the next chapter, you will learn exactly what vessels were used to store these treasures and why wood was not the only material used. Preserving the product was only half the battle. They also had to create the perfect container to protect it from the outside environment. The Vikings were masters of woodworking, and their cooperage skills reached incredible heights in the creation of airtight containers. Oak barrels, held together with flexible rods or iron hoops, were the pinnacle of engineering at the time. Each plank was fitted to the next, with such precision that not even air could seep between them. However, wood had a tendency to absorb odors and moisture, so a different material was used for particularly valuable products. In regions rich in soapstone, steatite, craftsmen carved massive bowls and vessels from the soft rock. Steatite had unique thermal insulation properties and did not react chemically with the acid in skir or whey. Milk in such a stone vessel stayed cold longer, even on a hot summer day. Stone vessels were heavy and durable, passed down from mother to daughter as part of the dowry. Their porous but dense structure was ideal for storing oil, preventing it from going rancid from contact with the walls. Lids for such vessels were made of the same stone or dense wood, ground to a perfect fit. The neck was often sealed with wax or fat to create a complete seal. For short-term storage and transport, birch bark containers were used, which had antibacterial properties. Birch bark did not rot and kept milk fresher than clay, which was fragile and porous. These lightweight and durable containers were indispensable in everyday life and when traveling. Craftsmen decorated them with carvings, turning a utilitarian object into a work of art. Leather wineskins were also used, but they were mainly intended for whey or ready-made beverages. Each material was chosen for a specific task, with a deep understanding of its physical properties. The Vikings did not try to fight the nature of materials, but used their strengths. It was a pragmatic approach, where the beauty of an object was inseparable from its functionality. In the dark corners of the longhouse stood rows of these vessels, wooden, stone, and birch bark, like silent guardians of prosperity. By the sound of a tap on the barrel, the mistress could determine how much was left in stock and whether it would last until spring. The integrity of the containers was checked regularly, because a crack in the stone or a dried-out stave could ruin the results of a whole summer's work. The reliability of the vessel was as important as the quality of the product inside it. Craftsmen who knew how to make the best barrels or carve the smoothest bowls were held in high esteem in society. Their craft was a guarantee that hunger would not creep into the house through a crack in the boards. Are you ready for the shocking truth about how the Vikings used the earth instead of electricity to cool food? They understood perfectly well that a stable low temperature was the key to preserving milk supplies. To achieve this, they created complex engineering structures known as earth cellars or storage pits. These were not just holes in the ground, but well-designed structures with drainage and thermal insulation systems. The pits were dug in dry places, often on hillsides, to ensure that rainwater could drain away. The walls were reinforced with stone or wattle to prevent the soil from crumbling inside. The bottom was lined with a layer of stones, and straw or dry moss was laid on top to serve as insulation. Barrels of oil, cheese, and skir were placed in such a pit and tightly covered with lids. The structure was covered with logs and a thick layer of earth and turf, creating a thermos effect. Even in the summer heat, the temperature inside such a storage facility remained low, like in a modern refrigerator. In winter, the layer of earth and snow protected the products from freezing to a rock-hard state, maintaining a stable plus temperature. This allowed the products to retain their structure and taste despite sudden temperature changes. In some regions, natural caves or crevices in the rocks, where it was always cool, were used. The entrances to such caves were closed with heavy doors, turning them into communal warehouses. Only trusted individuals had access to such a refrigerator, as it stored the strategic reserves of the entire settlement. The ability to choose the right place for a pit was an art that required knowledge of geology and groundwater behavior. special attention was paid to ventilation. The products had to breathe, but not be exposed to warm air. The Vikings used hollow plant stems or wooden pipes to create primitive exhaust fans. This prevented condensation and mold from forming on the walls of the cellar and barrels. The system worked flawlessly for centuries, using only the laws of physics. The opening of the earth cellar in the spring was a real celebration, symbolizing the end of the lean season. The smell of dampness mixed with the aroma of aged cheese and butter was the smell of life. People descended into the cool twilight to retrieve the treasures accumulated the previous summer. These underground chambers were the heart of food security for any large farmstead. Without them, the accumulation of surpluses and, as a result, trade and military campaigns would have been impossible. The land that fed them in summer preserved their food in winter. In the next chapter, you will learn about the Vikings' hard currency, which could not only be eaten, but also used as a weapon in close combat if it was hard enough. Among the dairy products of the Vikings, a special place was occupied by a hard cheese known as Gamalost, or old cheese. It was not just a food product, but the result of many years of observation of how milk behaves in the harsh northern climate. This cheese allowed nutrients to be preserved for many months when fresh produce was unavailable. It became a symbol of the survival and economic wisdom of the Northerners. Its production was passed down from generation to generation as an important skill. It was a long-aged product made from skimmed milk without the use of rennet. This method was a necessary measure, as it was not always possible to obtain the right raw materials for traditional milk curdling. The Vikings learned to ferment milk naturally, relying on lactic acid bacteria. Heating then helped to separate the curds from the whey. Even at this stage, care and experience were required. The milk was fermented, heated, and the resulting curds were tightly pressed in wooden molds, removing all moisture. The drier the mass, the stronger and more durable the cheese became. Pressing was done by hand, so the skill of the hostess played a huge role in the result. The wooden molds absorbed excess moisture and gave the cheese its characteristic faceted shape. This process could take many hours. The resulting heads were dried in the wind until they were rock hard. The Scandinavian climate contributed to this. The cold, dry air did its job slowly but surely. Sometimes the cheeses were left on special racks under a canopy so that they were exposed to a constant flow of air. Over time, the surface became hard, and the cheese resembled a dense mineral. It was this quality that made it almost eternal. Such cheese had a coarse, crumbly texture, and a very sharp, rich taste and aroma. People unfamiliar with northern cuisine might even consider it too strong. But for the Vikings, this richness was a sign of quality and maturity. They appreciated the deep flavor that only appeared after long months of aging. Cheese was not just food, but a manifestation of the power of nature. It could be stored for years without requiring any special conditions other than dryness. This was especially important in homes that did not have constant cold temperatures or special storage rooms. Even on long journeys, the cheese remained edible, retaining its structure and nutritional value. It could be transported across the sea or carried in a bag for weeks. This durability made it indispensable. Gamalost was the perfect food for travelers. It was light, compact, and incredibly nutritious. One small piece was enough to keep you going during long journeys. The Vikings understood that it was important to have food that would not spoil and would not take up much space on the road. Thanks to this, such cheese became a constant companion of warriors and merchants. It was taken even on the most dangerous voyages. To eat this cheese, it often had to be cut with a knife or soaked in beer or broth. These liquids made it softer and more pliable. Sometimes it was added to hot dishes, turning it into a nutritious porridge-like mass. This method allowed for variety in the diet, even if only old hard cheese was available. It was a versatile and convenient product. Cheeseheads were rubbed with salt and sometimes smoked over the hearth to create a protective crust against insects and mold. Salt was an important preservative that prevented the growth of harmful bacteria. Smoking added an extra layer of protection by covering the surface with a thin film of smoke. This method was available to every home that had a hearth. It turned cheese into a product with a long shelf life. The smoke gave the cheese a specific aroma and further preserved it. In each settlement, the smoke had its own shade, depending on the wood, so the taste of the cheese could vary from place to place. This created unique regional traditions that were valued by traders. People could tell where the cheese came from just by its smell. This mark of quality added to its value. In Viking storerooms, cheeses were kept on high shelves suspended from the ceiling, where warm, dry air from the hearth blew over them. This arrangement protected the products from rodents and moisture. The height of the shelves helped maintain constant air circulation. Thanks to this, the cheese matured evenly and acquired the desired density. This solution was simple, but surprisingly effective. In the Viking world, food storage was a woman's domain, and the keys to the storerooms were a symbol of this power. These keys were not mere household items. They served as a sign of the trust that the family placed in women. They were worn in plain sight, so that everyone understood who was responsible for food and order. The mistress of the house felt the weight of these keys not only on her belt, but also in her soul, for they symbolized responsibility for the family. This role was passed on only to those who were able to think soberly and with foresight. The mistress of the house, the Husfreyja, wore a bunch of bronze keys on her belt, and this was a sign of her indisputable authority. The keys jingled with every step she took, reminding those around her that she was the one who controlled the inner wealth of the house. They were considered part of her status and could be used to determine a woman's position in the community. Such a set of keys was not just a tool, but a symbol of wisdom and experience. A woman with keys commanded respect even from the most severe warriors. Only she knew how many barrels of oil and skir were left, and only she decided when and to whom to open the stores. This information was a secret that could not be revealed even to family members in order to avoid waste. She kept a mental record of everything the men brought back from their expeditions or gathered from the fields. This required memory, attentiveness, and a deep understanding of seasonal cycles. Any mistake could be costly. The men could gather resources, go on raids, and plow the land, but it was the woman who turned what they obtained into the capital of survival. She decided what could be eaten now and what should be set aside for unfavorable months. In her hands, the harvest was transformed into a well-thought-out system of reserves, calculated for the long term. Men relied on her ability to distribute food. Without such a hostess, the home could not be considered stable. Her prudence and ability to plan the diet 6 months in advance determined the fate of the entire clan. She knew how quickly food was consumed in winter and what could be substituted in case of shortage. It was real mental work that required strict self-control. She could not afford to show weakness because the lives of her family depended on her. This is how the special inner strength of northern women was formed. If she made a mistake and opened the barrels too early, the family might not survive until spring. Such a mistake would be a tragedy that could not be corrected. Winter in Scandinavia was merciless, and there was nowhere to get the missing food. Therefore, Women approached their decisions with the utmost caution. Every action had consequences. It was a huge responsibility that required strict discipline and a mathematical mind. A woman had to anticipate the needs of her family and take into account illness, guests, and unforeseen circumstances. Her wisdom was compared to the skill of an experienced warrior, because in both cases the stakes were equally high. She made decisions every day, like a commander on the front line. This role made her the heart of the entire household. The pantry was her fortress, where even the Jarl could not enter without permission. Inside were stored not only food, but also tools, herbs, and rare supplies. These things required special care, and the woman did not allow disorder. Every item was in its place so that nothing would be lost in vain. This space was her world and her strength. There, in the cool darkness, she worked her magic of resource management, checking the quality of the food and sorting it. She could tell by the smell when a barrel of honey was starting to spoil or when cheese needed to be turned. This knowledge came with experience and was almost intuitive. Viking women perceived it as part of their nature. It was this intuition that saved families from starvation. She knew every barrel by sight, remembered when the butter was churned and when the cheese was made. Her memory spanned entire seasons, and she was able to connect past events with future needs. This skill made her indispensable in the home. The clan depended on people who knew how to work with nature, not against it. Therefore, the ability to preserve food was considered the highest art of housekeeping. This knowledge was passed on to daughters from an early age, preparing them for their role as guardians of life. The girls watched their mothers and helped them, learning the art of distributing supplies. This education began with simple tasks and gradually turned into a full-fledged skill. By the time a girl became an adult, she already knew the entire system. This is how the tradition was preserved. Women were also responsible for the cleanliness of vessels and rooms, understanding that dirt was the enemy of supplies. They carefully cleaned the storerooms and made sure that nothing attracted mold or insects. It was a job that required daily attention. Cleanliness increased the shelf life of food and protected the family from disease. Thus, hygiene became a matter of survival. They used boiling water, ash, and fragrant herbs such as nettles or juniper to disinfect barrels. These natural remedies had antiseptic properties, which women knew about thanks to years of practice. They knew how to combine different methods to achieve maximum results. Their knowledge was simple, but based on observation and experience. That is why they worked effectively. It was primitive but effective sanitation that prevented epidemics and food spoilage. It helped keep the family healthy and ensured a stable supply of food. Women were so accustomed to these methods that they performed them almost automatically. It became part of their daily routine. Their work was invisible but vital to the entire clan. Women's status in Viking society was high precisely because of their role in the household economy. Men knew that without her work, their spoils would be worthless. She turned the chaos of nature into order and protected the home better than any fence. Her strategic thinking made the family stronger. Therefore, respect for the husfrey was sincere. Respect for the mistress of the keys was boundless, because the full stomachs of every warrior depended on her decisions. People understood that she was the one who provided support when the men went on long expeditions. In her hands lay the foundation of security, which could not be replaced by weapons. This connection between the mistress and the warrior made their union particularly strong. All members of the clan felt its importance. She was the strategist of the rear, without whom any military campaign would be doomed. The warriors went to sea knowing that order and prosperity awaited them at home. This confidence strengthened their fighting spirit and helped them endure the hardships of their campaigns. The woman who managed the supplies became their invisible ally. She provided stability that could not be underestimated. In the Viking Age, butter was such a valuable and stable product that it became a measure of value, replacing money. There was a whole system of weights and measures based on dairy products. Peasants paid rent and taxes to the king in barrels of butter called laupar. It was a universal currency that was accepted everywhere from Iceland to Norway. Butter did not depreciate like bad coins and always had real consumer value. A person's wealth was literally measured in kilograms of fat stored in their barns. Tax collectors checked the quality of the butter by piercing it with special probes to make sure there were no voids or rancid layers inside. Bad butter could be rejected, which carried a huge fine and shame. This encouraged producers to maintain high standards of preservation quality. Butter was used to pay fines for crimes, vergeld, and as ransom for prisoners. It was a liquid asset that could be easily exchanged for iron, cloth, or slaves. The economies of entire regions depended on the production and storage of milk fat. In Iceland, where grain did not grow well, dried fish and butter, wadmal and butter, were the main export goods. Ships loaded with barrels of butter sailed to England and the continent, returning with grain and luxury items. It was international trade built on milk fermentation. The value of butter was so high that stealing a barrel from a cellar was considered a serious crime, punishable by exile or death. Guarding dairy warehouses was an important task, to which the best warriors and dogs were assigned. Even in religious rituals, butter played a role as an offering to the gods, symbolizing gratitude for fertility. It was smeared on idols or burned in sacred fires, giving the most valuable thing that people had to the higher powers. When the first rays of the spring sun began to melt the snow and the days grew longer, the moment of truth arrived. The supplies laid in during the fall were coming to an end, and the last, most distant barrels were opened. This was the time when the skill of preservation was tested. Had the taste been preserved, or had bitterness set in? The taste of last year's butter and cheese was distinctive. Sharp, fermented, rich. To modern tastes, it might seem spoiled, but to the Vikings, it was the taste of victory over winter. Every bite of old cheese eaten was confirmation that death had retreated once again. The leftover whey and Skir were used to ferment a new batch, closing the annual cycle of life. The bacteria that survived the winter passed on their power to the new milk, ensuring the continuity of tradition. The old starter culture was a bridge between the past and the future harvest. In the spring, the cattle were again driven out to pasture, and a new season of abundant milk began. But the experience of the past winter was taken into account. If the supplies were insufficient, more pits and barrels were prepared for the following year. It was a constant process of learning from mistakes and improving survival techniques. The ability to preserve milk allowed the Vikings to settle in lands that seemed uninhabitable to other peoples. Greenland, Iceland, the Faroe Islands, wherever they went, they brought with them the culture of skyr and butter. It was their secret weapon of colonization. Today we open the refrigerator and don't think about the miracle behind a glass of fresh milk in winter. But 1,000 years ago, every sip was the result of heroic efforts, knowledge, and struggle with nature. The history of Viking dairy products is a hymn to human ingenuity. These technologies have not disappeared without a trace. They have been transformed into modern Icelandic and Norwegian delicacies, reminding us of our roots. Skir, Gamalost, engraved fish, All these are echoes of a time when preservation was an art form. We have seen that the Viking world was sustained not only by the steel of their swords, but also by the strength of oak barrels and the cold of earthen cellars. Their ability to preserve milk and butter in the wild was a true technological marvel of their time. It was a quiet, daily battle for calories, in which patience, cleanliness, and knowledge prevailed. Without this reliable rear guard, there would have been no great discoveries or conquests that changed the map of Europe. Do you think modern people could survive using only these ancient methods of food preservation? Or are we too dependent on technology? Share your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new insights into the life and secrets of the past.